It was a Wednesday. I remember because the farmers' market's always midweek, and my truck still smelled like cedar mulch and hens. I'd just gotten home, thinking about whether I'd made enough selling eggs and peach preserves to cover feed for the month, when Scout, that old shepherd mix of mine, froze halfway down the drive. Now, when a dog like Scout goes still, you listen. He was bred on instincts sharper than any alarm, and that day he was carved out of stone, ears high, nose twitching. Then I smelled it. Thick, greasy, chemical. Not smoke from brush, but something darker, hotter, man-made. I dropped the egg crate right there in the dirt and started running. The closer I got to the back pasture, the heavier that smell hit, until I came over the rise and saw it. My cornfield gone, just a black smoking rectangle. The stalks I'd nursed from seed were nothing but twisted shadows. You ever hear fire die? It hisses like it's laughing at you. Scout paced beside me, growling low, tail stiff. I knelt down, touched the soil, still warm, slick with melted plastic from the irrigation lines. Someone had doused it good. You can tell when fire's wild and when it's surgical. This was precise, like someone had drawn the line with a ruler. And I already had a pretty good idea who. See, ever since that HOA finished building their luxury clubhouse down the hill, they'd been itching to get their hands on this land. My land. Said my unsightly rural fencing ruined their aesthetic. First it was letters in the mailbox, then notices about noise from my pump, then that stupid drone buzzing over my fields every morning. It wasn't just harassment, it was a campaign. And the queen of that campaign was Margaret Albright, HOA president, all pearls and perfume and poisoned kindness. The type who smiles through her teeth like she's auditioning for a toothpaste commercial while plotting your funeral. I'd told her no plenty of times. No to selling, no to easements, no to community partnerships. But some folks don't understand the word no until you carve it into stone. I guess that's when they decided to send a louder message. The fire department came 20 minutes later. The chief walked the perimeter, kicked some ash, crouched down. He didn't say much, but when he muttered, "Controlled ignition," under his breath, I knew it. Someone lit it on purpose. That night I sat on the porch, staring at the smoke drifting into the valley. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from fear, from anger so deep it made my teeth hurt. Margaret probably already had her press release drafted. Unfortunate natural fire near community property. But she had no idea who she'd just crossed. My family had been on this land since before her HOA even had pavement. And I still had the key to something they didn't know existed. Behind the North Ridge, hidden by oak and stone, sits the old dam, built by my grandfather in '58 after the floods. The county deed gave our family permanent stewardship rights, the authority to open or close that flow whenever drought or sediment threatened the valley. It doesn't look like much, just concrete and rust, but it holds the whole watershed in its hands. And that watershed feeds their manicured little paradise. 2 days after the fire, I went back out to the burn line with Scout. The soil was still steaming, and near the cottonwood tree, he started digging. That dog always knew where truth was buried. Out came a metal canister, scorched green under the soot, label half melted but still readable. Property of Green Rise Landscaping. That's the HOA's contractor. A few feet over, another one, cap blown clean off, reeking of accelerant. And then jackpot, a half-burned invoice tucked under a rock, still legible enough to read the signature. M. Albright. I took pictures, GPS tags, everything. Sent them to my friend Jody Ramirez at the county environmental office. She'd done army time with me before she went legit. Within a day, she confirmed what I already knew. Traces of magnesium nitrate and diesel fuel. Not exactly campfire material. I could have gone to the cops, but around here, money whispers louder than justice, and Margaret's husband happened to golf with half the county board. So I did something better. I paid her a visit. Walked straight into that shiny clubhouse while she was hosting some planning meeting. Dropped the canister on the table so hard her latte jumped. "Lose something?" I asked. Her smile cracked just a little. "This is a private meeting, Mr. Thorne." "Then it won't take long," I said. "This belongs to your contractor." I found it in my burned field, along with an invoice you signed 4 days before the fire. I just thought you'd want your paperwork back before the county and ATF start asking questions. She blinked, lips parting like a fish. The room went silent except for the hum of the AC. One of the board members tried to speak. "Sir, these are serious accusations." And I cut him off. "Not accusations, evidence. Have a nice day." I turned and walked out. Scout waited in the truck, tongue lolling, tail thumping against the seat like he knew I'd just pulled a pin from a grenade. That night, Margaret sent out one of her perfect little newsletters. Reminder: fire safety during drought conditions. No mention of whose field had burned. Just neat paragraphs about community vigilance. She even attached a map with my property circled in red like some cautionary tale. I printed it out and pinned it on my shed wall next to the photos of the burn. The wall was starting to look like a war room. 3 mornings later, Jody called. "We got satellite heat data," she said. "Ignition started 30 feet inside your property line. Not the trail. Inside. Whoever's covering their tail, they're lying." That was the moment the anger turned into something sharper, calmer, like water behind a gate. You hold it long enough, pressure builds. And when you finally open it, nothing stands in its way. When anger cools, it doesn't disappear. It condenses into something heavier. It sits behind your ribs like a weight, waiting for gravity to pull it loose. After that call from Jody, I spent a long night staring at the old dam plan spread out across my kitchen table. My grandfather's handwriting filled the margins. Numbers, notes, words like overflow and release valve. And one phrase circled 3 times: for protection, not for profit. I could almost hear him saying it, voice thick with that stubborn pride he carried until the day he died. That dam wasn't just concrete and steel. It was our legacy, our shield against the valley's arrogance. And now, it was my line in the sand. The next morning, I filed a notice with the county. Scheduled drought mitigation release, authorized under deed section 6B. Purely procedural. No one could touch me for it. Still, I knew what I was really doing. It wasn't revenge, not in the cartoon sense. It was a reminder. Nature keeps receipts. Friday came with dry heat and a sky so clear it looked fake. Down in the valley, the HOA was decorating for their big South Creek Pool grand opening. A party built on stolen soil. Music, banners, champagne. Margaret in a lemon-yellow sundress shaking hands with the same people who'd once filed noise complaints because my rooster crowed before sunrise. You couldn't make it up. Scout and I hiked up to the ridge just after 10. From up there, you could see everything. The blue shimmer of their pool, the rows of SUVs lined along the cul-de-sac, the laughter carried by wind. I rested my hand on the cold iron of the floodgate wheel and whispered, "They think they built paradise, boy, but they built it in a river's memory." Scout tilted his head, tongue out like he understood every word. I eased the inspection valve first. Always test pressure before you turn the main. The dam groaned like an old animal waking up, deep and hollow. Then I cranked the wheel, slow and steady. The first rush of water came out whispering, then roaring, like it had been waiting half a century for permission to speak. I watched the gauges rise, logged the numbers, took the photos. Everything by the book. Always by the book. At exactly 11:42 a.m., I emailed the county water office. Flow initiated under Drought Clause 6B. Rate 2,300 gallons per minute. Estimated duration 4 hours. Sent paper as armor. Then I sat back and listened to the valley breathe again. Around 1:30, my phone buzzed. An old friend from dispatch whispering, "You didn't hear it from me, but Stone Creek's calling in an emergency. Rising water. Retaining wall breach." I thanked her, hung up, and started walking down the trail. The sound hit before the sight, the deep, muffled thunder of water finding its path. When I broke through the tree line, chaos had already taken over. People running in every direction, shoes slapping through puddles, music cutting in and out. The brand new stone wall behind the clubhouse had cracked clean down the middle, muddy water spilling over the patio, swallowing lawn chairs and cupcakes. Margaret stood barefoot in the middle of it all, shouting orders nobody followed. Mascara streaked, phone clutched like a lifeline. When she saw me, her eyes went wide, then narrow. "You," she screamed, pointing. "You did this. You flooded us." I walked closer, slow, calm. I filed everything with the county. "You can check the logs. This is criminal," she shouted. "You sabotaged us." "No," I said, stopping a few feet from her. "You built too close to the basin. All I did was let nature finish what you started." She lunged forward, slipping in the water, catching herself on the edge of a table that floated by. "You've ruined everything," she spat. "That pool was supposed to host the fall gala." I looked past her at the deep end, now filled with brown current and plastic flamingos bobbing like survivors. "Might want to reschedule." The sirens echoed up the valley before I made it back to my truck. By the time FEMA arrived, it was all over. 3 homes condemned, several more soaked to the studs. The clubhouse, her pride and joy, cracked foundation, structural failure, closed indefinitely. And me? I had paperwork proving every bolt turn was legal. That night, the local news showed Margaret on camera, still dripping, sobbing about man-made floods and vigilante farmers. I just smiled. You can't flood what was already underwater in lies. The next morning was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. Scout and I walked down to the creek. It had widened, yes, but it was clean, flowing true for the first time in years. Sediment washed out, the air sharp with cedar and silt. That's the thing about water. It doesn't destroy, it resets. FEMA inspectors came by later, polite as Sunday ushers. One of them ran his hand along the dam wall and said, "This is better maintained than half the county's infrastructure." I handed him a copy of the deed, the clauses highlighted in yellow. He read, nodded. "Airtight," he said. "You did everything right." I just smiled. That's the only way I know how. By the following week, the HOA had imploded. The website vanished. Margaret stepped down for personal reasons. Half the board resigned before sunrise. Insurance claims bounced under unpermitted construction in known floodplain. And the same neighbors who once called me a nuisance started waving when they drove by. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. Justice doesn't always come with applause. It comes with quiet. I sat on the porch that evening, bourbon in hand, Scout's head on my boot, watching the sunset turn the wet fields gold again. The corn would grow back. The land would heal. It always does when you stop trying to own it. Weeks passed. The valley smelled like earth again, not smoke or polish. The HOA's precious pond dried up completely after the culverts clogged with sediment. Their lawns browned. The fancy signs faded. But my field came back alive. Clover and ryegrass first, then little shoots of green threading through the black soil like forgiveness. That's when I knew it was over. Not when they lost, but when the land started forgiving us both. One evening, just before dusk, a knock came at the gate. It was one of the homeowners, a man I'd seen glare at me for years. He had his teenage son with him. "Mr. Thorne," he said, voice low. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. We believed what they told us about you." I didn't say anything, just nodded. The boy bent to pet Scout. "Cool dog," he said softly. I smiled. Best I ever had. They walked off, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone on that hill. A week later, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Inside, a single line in neat handwriting. "Thank you for protecting what they didn't understand." I didn't know who wrote it, maybe Jody, maybe someone from the valley, but it didn't matter. I tucked it into my grandfather's old ledger, right next to his last note. Legacy means doing what's right, even when nobody thanks you. That night I made chili, poured a drink, and sat out under the stars. Scout snored beside me. The creek whispered steady in the dark, and I realized something simple. People build fences to feel safe, but fences don't last. Water finds a way, always does, so I held the dam key in my hand, just feeling its weight. I wasn't planning to use it again, not unless I had to. Sometimes you only need to remind the world once that you still hold the floodgates. And if anyone ever tries to take what's mine again, well, they can read the signs. The land remembers. Now I'll ask you, whoever's listening, was I wrong? Was I justified? Or was I just another man who let anger turn into action? You tell me. Drop it in the comments. I'm curious which way the water runs for you.